All right, welcome everyone to our lesson on understanding attachment. This is one of the most pivotal lessons that you need for parenting. I just want you to really pay attention to this lesson, okay? Without this, we have no bid for leadership with our kids. They won't follow our lead. Parenting will just be frustrating. You'll feel like you're going in a circle all of the time. Without this, we can't get self-regulation. This is the basis for kids' self-esteem, their self-concept. It's so important that we get this as right as possible with our kiddos. So this kind of all comes down to just our relationships that we have. It's, attachment's just a fancy way of saying how we biologically connect initially with our caregivers. That's really the foundation of how we orientate ourselves to intimacy throughout our lifespan. And this is really a survival instinct. Now, if you think about our evolution as a species, we grew up in tribes of people living in very adverse outdoor conditions. And without attachment in our village, we wouldn't be able to start a fire, hunt and gather food. We wouldn't survive, forest fires or predators. It literally took a village. And that really comes from the idea of like, we're a tribal species. And so in our brains, attachment is wired as a survival instinct and this is why when kids get stressed, they're supposed to move towards us, not away from us, right? Because we are their safe place. We are the person that they're genetically programmed to go towards, who will offer reprieve and regulation. And so we want to be that compass point for our kids. It's vitally important to have leadership as a parent. Is you need attachment. And that is how our kids, if they have attachment, they are safeguarded against mental illness. They're more resilient. They're not going to get sick as much. They're going to have a higher IQ. They're going to feel more competent. Like the brain is going to grow faster and it's going to be wired for efficiency. Like there are so many amazing things that happen as a result of a secure attachment that kids need. So we really want to focus on this idea of secure attachment with our kids. Part of attachment came from the work of Dr. Conrad Lorenz along with John Bowlby. Those were like the two. And then I would say after that, Mary Ainsworth. So we'll talk about Bowlby really had the initial book on attachment that you can read, John Bowlby again. And then Conrad Lorenz, for example, and I think I just want to show you this really cute video of my son. That's why I included this. But in the 1930s, he looked at the idea of imprinting, that animals, when they're born, have this genetic predisposition, this biological drive to move towards something that move towards a certain voice or a certain person, that they're oriented very specifically for survival to follow. And this was done actually with geese. So interestingly enough, geese do this lovely thing called imprinting. And I'm actually going to show you what it looks like. I actually am an animal assisted therapist, and these are my kids, two of my kids when they're very little. And we actually hatch geese, baby geese on our farm. And they do imprint. That's the first thing they see and hear, they think is their mommy. So I have this really cute video of my son here. I hope it's going to play. You can see them following him. I think that's pretty darn cute. So my kids get to experience imprinting, and so it's not unique. Chickens imprint not very well. Geese imprint very well. So do ducks, kind of. Most mammals imprint. So I think all mammals actually imprint. Oh, sorry. So this is just a couple things. The other thing attachment does is it really impacts your worldview. So if you've had, say, experiences of your caregivers, your parents, or whomever is taking care of you, are your caregivers are consistent, they are loving, they make room for all your feelings, your needs are met physically, emotionally, and psychologically from the people in your life. You internalize the idea that the world is safe for the most part, because they provide the safety, right? It's not about the threats that exist out here. It's like what happens after the threat. Like you receive care and connection and healing from your loved ones, right? So then you feel like even though the world might not be physically safe, your village is safe. So you inherently kind of absorb that message that people are safe. So even if the world isn't safe, I can experience safety with our loved ones. And this creates a worldview that the world is safe, generally, that people are good, my needs will be met, I am worthy of love and protection. On the flip side, and then I'm lovable, essentially, and nothing's, my feelings are valued. There's nothing wrong with me for having all my feelings. So there's all this like wonderful things that happen as a result of secure attachment. And at the same time, you can skew a child's worldview in the opposite sense, where if a parent or caregiver is rejecting, harms the child, is not consistent, shames the child, tells them something's wrong with them, why are you crying, what's wrong with you, they experience the parent as psychologically or emotionally unsafe, neglectful. Kids are very egocentric, and it's much easier for a child to assimilate the idea that something must be wrong with them because the parent's not meeting their need. Kids don't have the ability to say, oh, maybe my mom has postpartum depression, or my dad struggled with his dad's own anger, so now he struggles with anger. Like, kids can't do that. Kids don't have that kind of introspection. And if they believed that to be true, their world would fall apart, because that means their parents aren't competent and their parent has to take care of them. So instead, the brain naturally defaults to something must be wrong with me. I am unlovable. I am unworthy. I must be broken in some way, or my parents would meet my need. So you can imagine how kids who don't get their attachment needs met often have very low self-esteem. They often are insecure in their adult attachments because they believe they're unworthy. And so they seek out relationships that basically become a self-fulfilling prophecy, that they will choose people in their life that mirror back their insecurities about themselves, because we always want what's predictable as human beings. It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And people like predictability and consistency. So people will unconsciously attract that kind of person into their life. If you've experienced domestic violence and you haven't reconciled that, it's very likely you will attract other people who are prone to violence. If you experienced, a narcissistic parent, there's a very good chance you will attract other narcissists into your life. Now, this isn't a shame thing. It's the brain will recognize it as like, I want to heal this. Instead, it just gets hurt over and over and over again, right? We call it trying to have a corrective experience, but it instead just keeps getting hurt. And ultimately, that person just mirrors back what that child who is now an adult, already believes about themselves, which is, I'm no good, I'm unlovable, something's wrong with me. So this is why like attachment is so pivotal, that we give our kids, if we can, their attachment needs need to be met, that kids need to, at the end of the day, experience these four S's of secure attachment, which the last one is secure. So they need to feel safe with us. They need to feel seen by us. They need to be soothed by us. And then that leads to security. So safety means physical safety, emotional safety. Seen means they're allowed, we see all of their feelings and welcome it. They have individual strengths that we might not have. They have individual interests that we have to value. We don't have to agree with it. It doesn't have to be just like us, but they are seen they're a whole person that is separate from us, and we value all of their emotional experiences, and then we'll make room for them. It doesn't mean we don't discipline. We talk lots about that in our discipline course. It doesn't mean we don't set limits. But that child has the experience of being welcomed. All parts of them are welcomed. And soothed means we regulate. We move towards when they feel an overwhelming feeling. So we talk about that in our lesson on emotion regulation, supporting emotion regulation. We talk about that in our discipline course. Now let's talk quickly about the neurology of attachment here. When kids attach, when they're in connection and our dance is going well with them, what's happening is they are getting a dose of two particular chemicals. We're getting oxytocin and we're getting vasopressin. And vasopressin is actually pretty prominent in male brains, more so than female brains. And this isn't a sexist thing. There are physiological differences in a male versus a female brain. And I'm talking about how you're born, not how you identify. It's the gender, the sex, I shouldn't say gender. Gender is a social term. The sex you are born with. Okay. So male and female brains look different structurally. So their chemicals can be a little bit different in what are released. So anyway, vasopressin is interesting with males because it is about protection and providing. So We see it more in males, but oxytocin is quite interesting. It's released in both, but more in the female brain. Oxytocin is what's in charge. It's released when we breastfeed. It's released when we go into labor, and when we have sex, when we make eye contact, when we hug, when we kiss. We get oxytocin, and it's a bonding chemical that makes us feel attached, and we can fall in love with oxytocin or just feel compassion when we have oxytocin. It's really they call it the love chemical, the love hormone as oxytocin. So those are your two, really the chemicals in charge of now. If we talk romantic love, that we have some other things that kind of come into place there. So, but we're talking about parent-child relationships, those are the two big players there. And then we also have something called mirror neurons that when you engage in serve and return responses with your child. So your child, looks at you and smiles, you smile back, your child points, you look and say, oh, what's over there? Your child's like, Mom, look at the goal. I'm like, way to go, kiddo, like thumbs up, you did it. Those are serve and return responses. Our child is making a bid for connection when we're answering that bid for connection. That's serve and return, and we respond to it. When we respond to our child's emotions and we either mirror it with our face or our voice, or we name it, so you can physically name it, or just in your voice, your tone matches it. We are activating what are called mirror neurons in the brain, which are motor neurons that are in charge of basically you being able to empathize with other people. So when you mirror your child's feelings, they have the capacity to understand, this is how I feel. And then they can identify that feeling in another human being. And so that's a huge component of attachment in neurology, is kids, in order to develop empathy, have to experience being mirrored in their emotional experience by their parent, which involves facial muscles that we show them, that we understand how they feel, using our facial expression, our tone of voice, like, you're so sad, versus, oh, you're so frustrated with me, or you're so excited you did it. You can see there's a difference in the tone and the prosody in our voice. And so that mirroring is a huge component of your child developing compassion and empathy for others. So we're very cognizant of that as our kids grow, that our tone and our face really mirrors their emotional expression. So that's a huge part of it. It suppresses the sympathetic nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system kind of has two branches here. We have a sympathetic and parasympathetic. Your sympathetic is like the gas pedal of your brain. It's what causes you to go into a stress response: fight, flight, freeze, collapse. So stress response. And we talk more about this in our fostering emotion regulation, or our supporting emotion regulation course module. So you will learn more about this there. Then you've got so sympathetic is the gas. It's where you rev up. And then your parasympathetic was where you rev down. So it's where you calm. You access what's called the vagal system in the body, the vagus nerve. Your stress hormones go down. So what's supposed to happen is, when we are a safe place for our kids, when the amygdala, which again, go to our emotion regulation course, we talk more about the amygdala. we're not going to talk a ton about it here. Your amygdala is what's in charge of your stress response. And when our amygdala gets activated, biologically, we're programmed to move towards a caregiver to receive soothing, because especially when we're young, we don't have the ability to self-soothe, because the thinking brain isn't well developed. And so we have to, as caregivers, be the surrogate prefrontal cortex, the surrogate emotion regulation center for our child's brain, because that part of the brain isn't developed yet. So when we mirror their emotions, we get in close, we make room for all of the feelings, we use, say, a time in. We talk about that in our discipline course. When we get in close, we use active listening, all of these skills, which we talk about in our other modules here. What we're doing is activating the parasympathetic and suppressing the sympathetic. So we're basically taking our foot off of the gas and putting our foot on the brake. That makes sense. And we'll see a reduction in stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. And then we also see integration of the brainstem, or the brain systems. So what'll happen is, when you have a secure attachment and we provide co-regulation, where when our kids are like, lids are flipped, again, take our module on emotion regulation. And we also have parenting with the brain in mind. What we're going to have is we're going to develop connections between the three floors of the brain, the body brain, the feelings brain, and the thinking brain, and the right and left hemisphere. So really cool stuff happens from attachments. We get kids who have access to multiple lobes of the brain, and we see synchronization of certain brain activities that you wouldn't see otherwise unless they had the secure attachment. So, and I did include this. I should have and had this actually when I talked about the imprinting. There's also been studies done on monkeys that sometimes I think we were taught when behaviorism was running the psychology field that you don't bite the hand that feeds you. That is why kids follow parents' leads, is because they're a source of food and water. But actually, that's not why, that isn't the case, because if you've ever experienced losing someone, you're not hungry and you don't feel like sleeping or eating. Like when you are in distress, food is not your preoccupation. Safety and connection and moving and finding your safe person is your preoccupation. And so his name is Dr. Harlow, Hendrix Harlow, I think. Hopefully I don't have that backwards. Anyway, you can look up Harlow experiments. They're horrible experiments. They were done on monkeys, where they have these orphan monkeys that were placed in the care of placed in cages with these two mothers, a wire mother where there was food and a mother where there was no food, but there was a soft terry cloth. And when we look at how many hours a day the infant monkey spent with either mother, most of the day was spent with the one that provided comfort, soothing, connection. It was not much connection. I mean, it was soft, versus the wire mother that provided milk. And when presented with a threat, they put these horrible, scary robots in proximity to these monkeys. They always went to the mother that provided physical contact, which was, comfort, which was the soft mother. That makes sense. The one with that. So we know that kids are programmed to prioritize comfort even over food and water. So we are going to watch. I'm actually going to stop my share for a second, just because I know what's going to happen here is you're not going to be able to hear this. Just bear with me. I will include a link to this video below, but we're just going to watch it really quick. So if you're frustrated with the lack of the sound's not good, just scroll down to the bottom of the lesson and you will see this video. Okay, so hopefully you can see this now.
John Bowlby was a British psychologist, and he became extremely interested in child-mother separation during the bombing of London. The bombing of London, a lot of parents sent their kids to the safety of the countryside. And the kids were with safe people, they were well cared for, they were well fed, but they still had a very negative response to the separation from their mothers. At that point, he looked at the biology that was emerging in primatology. A monkey infant gets almost all its nutrition in the first 2 or 3 months of life from its mother, from lactation. But the infant who's weaned still seeks proximity. You'll see the infant reach out and touch the mom's tail or touch its coat. There's a continuing lifelong desire for proximity and contact. And Bowlby and others have seen that proximity seeking and that contact seeking as being cornerstones of what they call attachment behavior.
In the first part of the 20th century, behaviorists and psychoanalysts claimed that babies love their parents because you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you. The innovation of Bowlby was to observe that that can't be all. That what the child needs is not only to be fed, but also to be held by an understanding, sensitive, and responsive adult. And that optimal social and mental health outcomes will follow from that. And 60 or more years on now, we have a half century of evidence showing that he was more or less right.
Our program at the Center for Babies, Toddlers, and Families is really based on the theories of John Bowlby, with the idea that we really need to help parents and children form a secure attachment. So oftentimes, families are referred to us when the parents have had very difficult childhoods themselves and are really struggling in this role of being a parent.
Like I said, I never had a mommy. I was never taught how to take care of anybody or myself, so it was like very hard. Like I wouldn't have patience, like the crying, like I would, scream at her and stuff like that, And
for many parents who really were neglected as children, hearing a baby cry triggers in them their own feelings of that unrelenting crying that they did. So for Pearl, it was very, very difficult for her to be able to meet her child's needs.
Push it, push this button. Yeah, hard, push it.
We've partnered with the Center for Attachment Research at the new school for a series of attachment measures to test that our intervention is effective.
So come on in, Pearl. That's going to be your chair. So just put her down and let her have a go at whatever she wants to do in here. Okay? We measure the attachment relationship with a laboratory scenario that takes 20 minutes. The critical point is where the mother gets a cue to leave the room.
Bye, baby girl. See you later.
Some children look on the outside like they're very independent and seem not to notice, but physiologically are very aroused and stay aroused even in the presence of when that caregiver returns. By contrast, the securely attached child often notices, cries when the caregiver leaves, and when the caregiver comes back, easily turns to the caregiver and looks to the caregiver to be comforted, and then they can get back to some kind of homeostasis.
Okay, you play with them.
We think this response is one of the hallmarks of mental health.
No.
What is so interesting about childhood development is that we know a lot about the long-term, lifelong consequences of early life adversity, ranging from psychological effects like substance abuse and depression, but also biological consequences like increased incidence of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and a whole host of other physical ailments. One of the things we know that can lead down the path towards cardiovascular disease is chronic inflammation.
Sorry, I'm going to share this one. Okay. All right. So I encourage you to watch the rest of the video below. So I will have the link there. And this is what you just saw in the video, is which is called the strange situation, which is coined by Mary Ainsworth. And the strange situation was developed in the 70s to discern attachment security in kiddos. And usually it's between the age of 9 and 18 months, but we can do this with the kids who are toddlers and even very young. I do this, I've seen this when kids leave me, or their parents leave their kids with me for therapy too, when I see that initial separation. And the idea, it's how kiddos attach based on how kids experience separation anxiety and how easily they are soothed. And also when they are in a strange situation, which means it's a brand new situation, is how readily they explore the room. So what happens in the strange situation is a child is put in a strange room with the parent. The parent leaves. We look at how the kiddo responds to the parent leaving. And also when the parent is in the room, do they explore the room? Then you have a stranger come in. Does that kiddo go up to the other stranger? Do they stay close to mom? Do they have like stranger danger and cling? And then you're left, the kiddo at one point is left in the room with the stranger, have everybody else, the stranger tries to soothe the kids. Either way, there's all these different dances that happen. And by the end of the experiment, you have one of these 4 attachments. Actually, it's one of 3 attachment styles based on the experience. And then we were able to coin a 4th one after the studies were done, which is disorganized attachment. So actually, I'm going to include this one below, but here's just a really quick thing on secure, ambivalent, and avoidant attachment styles. This is how the kids respond based on this experiment. So you can read here what kind of happens. But, reunion behavior is what means when the parent comes back, what happens. And then they kind of look at the other pieces. So if you're ever curious about what this experiment looks like and you think of your own child when they were young, how they respond, you can almost set this up or at least reflect on moments where your child's left babysitter for the first time, or you drop them off at school the first time and then you come back, what happens? And there's just something to look at there. But I want to give you this other model here that we've coined with attachment, and that's a circle of security, and it's a modality I'm trained in. And it's just another model to look at. You know what? I'm just going to, well, then we'll look at this and then we'll use this as, we'll talk about those attachment styles. So if we think about these attachment styles, secure, ambivalent, and avoidant, I'm going to come back to these to explain what they are. So just bear with me here. I just want to use some of this language in terms of circle of security, give you the language, and then I'm going to move on to the attachment styles and what they are. So according to the attachment model of circle of security, a parent needs to be a secure base and a safe haven, which means that child can develop autonomy and play and go out into the world and explore. And then when the parent values that autonomy and exploration, and then when that kiddo inevitably falls apart, because they all do, that they feel scared or overwhelmed, they have a tantrum, or they had a hard day and they're irritable, that parent is a safe haven and they provide soothing. They make room for all the feelings the child has. They help the child understand their feelings. So really it's about being a secure base and a safe haven, and that child feeling, remember, seen, safe, soothed, and secure. So when we think about attachment styles that were coined by Mary Ainsworth, we want our kids to have this secure attachment. These kids basically have both parents have had hands on the top of the circle and the bottom of the circle. They have provided that child ample experiences to explore. So they're not helicoptering over their kids. We'll talk more about helicoptering here in a second. They are saying it's good to explore. It's good to play, good to make friends. That parent can kind of let go a little bit. They will engage the child in play too, kind of encourage them and let them go off as they get more brave. And they do things with the child. And so they want them to engage with the world, right? And then when that child comes back in, that parent co-regulates. They say, all your feelings are good. They soothe the child when they're hurt or scared. So that's where the safe haven, right there, that a secure base, that child will come back in. And I always think of it as a bungee cord where they go out and come in. And you'll see this when they're young. They go out for a little bit and come back. And then the older they get, the longer the cord gets, where they'll spend more time away from you. When they're really little, they might only spend 2 minutes away from you and come back in. And by the time they're teenagers, they might go days without, seeing you, it seems like, and then they come back in. But a secure attachment, these kids will come back in, usually several times a day, even if they're teenagers. I wouldn't say days, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying, is the cord does get longer until at some point, we don't cut the cord because really we're always in attachment, but it feels like we kind of cut the cord when they move out a little bit, right? But we hope they do come back. So at that point, it becomes more of an invisible string than a bungee cord. And I want to be clear, to get this, you do not, it's the most predominant attachment style is secure attachment. So there's far more kids that exist that are securely attached than not. And I want to say, and I can't remember who did the landmark study on this. I have it written down somewhere. There was a study on good enough. They coined it good enough parenting, that parents' responsitivity and co-regulation and attunement, where we notice what's going on with our kids and we're reflecting back and we're engaging with them in language. You only have to do it 30% of the time. So that's good enough parenting 30% of the time. So I want you to give a big collective sigh of relief that you only have to be on top of this stuff 30% of the time. That's the other 70% we're abusing our kids. It just means life happens. We're busy hustling our kids' activities. We're distracted. We're talking to our spouse. We can't always be on top of it with our kids. But if we're on top of it 30% of the time, we're doing great. And then we have an ambivalent kiddos who we coin them kangaroo. I call them kangaroo kids. These kids like have an empty cup. It's like a hole in the cup, and they're very clingy, and they really struggle with receiving a regulation from us. So it's in the landmark studies, these kids cried when the parent left, but when the parent came back, they resisted co-regulation. It's like nothing the parent could say or could do. It was like they were angry almost, like they'd be fussy. So these kids are really difficult to soothe, but they want you to stay close. So they often are coined anxious kids, anxious ambivalent, even though all the insecure attachment styles are anxious. So let me be clear. But this one looks like traditional anxiety because there's a lot of a proximity seeking from the kiddo. They want to be close to you all the time. And why they are this way is because caregivers, have been inconsistently available to them. Now, this isn't a blaming thing. This can be there's lots of reasons we are inconsistent with our kids. Two parents, very different parenting styles. Maybe you guys were friggin' rock stars till you had a second kid who was there very colicky or was in the hospital. Or you were a parent who is, again, rock star parent, but then developed postpartum depression. It could be a death of somebody, there's so many ways in which there could be a divorce. There could be a death in the family. There's so many ways we can develop this attachment style. That doesn't mean like your parenting's bad. There's just inconsistency in their world. So that's where this happens, ambivalent attachment style. Then our avoidant attachment style is our cat kids. I always say like cats are very autonomous and they seem like they don't need you. They do need you. They just kind of act like they don't. So these kids look really independent. They're very autonomous. And when we think of the circle of security, they are good with the top of the circle. So the secure base, like it looks like they're good. Like they go out into the world, they explore the world, they have lots of autonomy. But when it comes down to the bottom of the circle is where it falls apart. Our ambivalent attachment kiddos, in terms of this model, really struggle with the secure base. They have a hard time leaving. So with the avoidantly attached kids, they look fine, they look independent until they become dysregulated. And then often what happens is they shut down or they get aggressive. They'll often struggle with impulse control. Lots of kind of stuff happens here. They're a little bit prickly that way. Really hard time with vulnerability. And their experience of emotions is usually the core here, that the parent or caregiver or somebody in their life who's been taking care of them has not given, there's been lots of top of the circle, but not enough bottom of the circle. So that parent or somebody has not been a safe haven to that kiddo, which means either they're scary. It's usually around emotional discomfort where that parent doesn't provide space for feelings. That parent's very uncomfortable with feelings, certain feelings even. And so that child learns that when they show the feeling, their parent cuts them off. Like they either punish them or ignore them. And so the kid's like, oh, my best insurance policy to stay close is to like ignore my feelings. So they numb out their feelings or only choose to show you certain feelings to maintain connection with you. So that's what that is. And then, of course, we have issues with aggression. They're hard to manage, impulsive, and they ignore the parent. And then disorganized attachment, which is very complicated. And most of you who are taking this probably don't have a disorganized attachment unless you have a kiddo in maybe foster care or adoptive care who's experienced a lot of trauma. Or you've got a kiddo, maybe your partner, there's domestic violence or something. But usually this is very rare, disorganized attachment. And that's where the caregiver has been usually abusive. The kiddos come from a very adverse beginnings. And that child is people are pain. And so they will do anything to prevent that pain from happening. They'll sabotage the relationship. There's mixed signals, like they'll run away from you instead of going towards you if they're really hurt, like where they're supposed to like come to you, like, I need a Band-Aid, like these kids would hide. Sometimes they can be very callous. They can sabotage connection. They can be bullies. Or sometimes there's a variation of this for reactive attachment disorder where they will indiscriminately attach to adults when there's no stranger danger. They would almost like go home with a complete stranger. They don't even understand how relationships work. So I give you these not to like categorize your child. I just want to teach you like what some of the red flags are, and that we want to move towards a secure attachment. And how do we do that? Hands on the top of the circle, hands on the bottom of the circle. We support autonomy while leaving and connection, and leaving lots of room for co-regulation and all the feelings, and being comfortable with all of the parts of our children, even the parts maybe we aren't the fondest of. And chances are, if there's a part of your child that you are uncomfortable with or you don't like, that is a projection of something you don't like about yourself. That's classic case of projection. Or it reminds you of someone in your life when you were little that you don't want to think about. So just keep in mind that piece. So the other piece I want you to know is really, really important when you, hopefully especially for those of you who are coming to this course because you have littles at home, is that, and this comes from the work of Dr. Gordon Neufeld, and he has given us permission, we love Gordon, to use this model in this course. Actually, any of the stuff we use, we ask for permission, including like Circle of Security or Dan Siegel or Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, these people, right? So we actually attach in a certain order. So we know attachment styles. There's actually a way, and when we know the order, everything becomes very clear of like what our kids, I do this to teach you what needs need to be met in order for your child to advance in their stages of attachment. So attachment happens in 6 stages and in a certain order. And some of those we wouldn't recognize as attachment. So it's really cool when you realize this is a stage of attachment. And so I need to do more of this when my kid's in that stage, right? Okay. So they are senses, sameness, belonging, loyalty, significance, love, and being known. So being known is, we'll start at the bottom. Senses, year 1, is all about contact and physical closeness. This is where, separation happens. Separation anxiety happens with kiddos. They don't want to be put down. They don't want to sleep in the crib by themselves. They derive safety and emotional and physical safety, psychological safety from being held. And if we look at a lot of intact traditional cultures, say in Africa as an example, they actually don't let kids in the first year feet touch the ground. Kids are carried everywhere. So it's very interesting. I think if we look at our roots historically, we knew, and this is where I think ergo carriers and stuff like baby carrying and baby wearing have come back into style. It's actually how we were designed, and most primates carry their young when they're very tiny. So that is connecting through the senses. And if and only if we meet that need. So when your child cries, we pick them up. When they're hungry, we feed them. If they're crying in the middle of the night, we go into their room. Okay, so that's connecting through the senses. If we do that step correctly, we get to move on to the next level, but you have to meet the need to move on to the next level. The next stage of attachment is connecting through sameness, where your child copies you. And this is where I have specific recollections of my son when he was 18 months old, in my room, sitting on the vanity in my bathroom. And when I would put makeup on, he would put makeup on. When his dad was in the garage playing with his engine on his car, my son would grab, ratchet or a screwdriver, whatever it was. I'm not very good with tools. And he would be in there like mimicking what my husband or his dad was doing. So I think there is an element of copying, and sometimes because we're very gender role driven, some parents have a really hard time with this because they're like, my son shouldn't be putting on makeup. He's a boy. And it's like, it's not about the makeup. It's that copying that happens, that kids emulate their parents. So that's the second year. And if we allow this to happen without judgment and allow kids, when we're cooking, we give them, tools to cook with us. If we're in the kitchen, they've got their own pots and pans they're banging on too. Like this, we allow the copying to happen. We're going to foster that attachment very quickly. Then the third year, what should happen is we've got, and again, this is like traditionally how long it takes, but once you've done this you've gone through this video game, you've gone through all the levels, you'll be able to do this more quickly with someone else. So the next dance, the next caregiver, you'll progress through the stages quite quickly, but you still have to go through the stages. Okay. You just already have the pathway in front of you if you've done it once. The third year is about belonging and possessing, loyalty, and it's my mommy, my daddy, my teddy, and they don't share. Okay. They need to possess something first before they're willing to share it. So that is being on the same side as, protecting. They want to serve. They begin to obey, stand up for someone. They start to develop a sense of family here. So that's where the mine and me and that piece will really come up, as possessing things and people. And that's normal. And this is why we don't expect kids in this would be like 2 to 3 years of age. They don't share. Yeah, they have to possess things before they're ready to share them. It's part of attachment. Then in the 4th year, so 3 to 4 years of age, we start this idea of, so 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Significance. Do I matter? And this is about being special. There's something unique about your relationship, that they want to hear stories about when they were born, or they want to hear about that you thought about them when you were at work that day, or you brought them a special toy when you were on a business trip. There's something very unique about your relationship, and they need to know that. So that's where the significance. Do I matter? Is this relationship different than other ones? In the 5th year, what should happen is where their heart really like comes online, and he has really big feelings, and you just, there's this love where they're they'll tell you they love you. They're drawing hearts on pieces of paper and giving you, my office here, you can't see it, is full of artwork that came from this particular year. And I was a kindergarten teacher at one point in another life. And that, oh my gosh, that is, the year that kids just make you so many drawings and pictures. And they tell you like, Miss S, I love you so much. And so this is really like giving their heart to you. And it's so important, especially at this age, that when they get in trouble and they make a mistake, that they still know that they're lovable. And the worst thing you could do is retract love from them when they make a mistake, because that will break their heart, literally. And that is so big, is knowing in this stage of attachment that love with you is unconditional. Okay. Doesn't mean you have to agree with their choices, but you are never withdrawing love as a punishment. You shouldn't do that anyway, but this is particularly damaging from 4 to 5, if they're at that stage of attachment at 4 to 5. And then, because again, these, you can have kids regress through these stages, and you can have kids progress quite quickly if they've already walked this. So, you can have a 20-year-old person stuck in the year 1 of attachment, stuck in the senses. You can be an adult. I know, like, even my husband has, he still struggles in our marriage with being known. Like, he's 45. Like, he got to love, but being known is still hard for him. Intimacy is hard, being able to share your shame or embarrassment, or so. I mean, depending on your childhood, we can struggle with these our whole lives. But I'm giving you the roadmap for when your kids are little, so you can help get through this and know the ingredients at each stage of attachment. And this last stage, which I just mentioned, my husband, who I know is actually hearing this because he's just below me here, and my office is upstairs and he's downstairs working right now, is intimacy, which is sharing all of yourself with someone, all of your secrets, all of your shame, all of your dark places, and the good stuff too. This is really the basis of the groundwork for our marriages and our spouse, like our romantic relationships, not maybe marriages, but romantic relationships, where we're supposed to be intimate and we're supposed to share all of ourselves with someone. And these are where kiddos, we know they're here because they tell you everything, even the stuff you don't want to hear. Like, you're like, oh, I just didn't need to know you farted today in math class, and they lied to you. They just feel horrible, and they just blurted out that they did something wrong. Like, they just can't help themselves. Like, they don't want to hide things from you, and it makes them feel horrible when they do. So what we can see is sometimes anxiety that gets triggered with our kids and our attachment dance when these needs aren't met. And that's what this slide is about. So if, kids are in the stage of senses of attachment, and they can't physically be with us, like having, a 1-month-old sleep in a crib in a room by themselves. Yeah, of course it stresses them out when they're in a room by themselves. They connect through the senses. So it's very hard, which is why we go to them when they are crying. We don't leave them to cry it out. Sameness, punishing your child for putting, my son putting the makeup on. Had I shamed him and told him it wasn't okay because he's a boy, not that it matters if he puts makeup on, but like that, it was a copying. It's how he's saying, like, I want to be like you. And then belonging and loyalty, like feeling like you're not part of the family. Like, that you're different. Like, why can't you be like your sister? Like, that comparing piece is really hard. Or not getting one-on-one time with a parent to feel like they can possess them, like they need to feel like they can possess their parent, that the parent is an extension of them when they're very little. So significance, feeling like they don't matter to the parent. Love, well, not feeling loved, feeling like they did something wrong, they're no longer lovable is a big problem. And being known is when you criticize them or punish them when they share something about themselves, can be very, very triggering and very anxiety provoking for our kids. So now we're going to shift a little bit to parenting style, which I think is an important part of attachment, because certain parenting styles support secure attachment. And this is like, I'm 40, so hopefully you know who these characters are. And you can look it up. We have Red Foreman from that 70s show. We have Danny Tanner from Full House. We have the mom from Mean Girls, and then the mom from Matilda, I think. Yes, Matilda. Anyway, and so what we have is authoritarian parents are my dad was this, is very strict but low on warmth. Lots of rules, lots of structure, but little warmth and affection. Okay. Authoritative, which often people get mixed up with authoritarian. Authoritative is parents who are equal on their structure. So they have lots of rules and structure, but also have a lot of warmth and consistency and lots of room for feelings. And then you have permissive, which are high on warmth, but low on structure and rules. And then uninvolved neglectful are basically like, they don't have warmth and they also don't have rules. And so parenting style is extremely important in terms of developing attachment and also mental health outcomes. So here we have, authoritative parents is associated with high academic performance, self-esteem, social skills, low mental illness, and lower delinquency rates. Your authoritarian parents, like your Red Foreman parents, who are like militant parents, are associated with low academic performance, self-esteem, mental health. Drug and alcohol use is really rampant with this particular parenting style. A lot of depression and anxiety, much higher risk for suicide here too. So again, very strict, but not a lot of room for feelings. And then your permissive parents, remember, high warmth, low rules. Kids are egocentric, impulsive, poor social skills, problematic relationships with other people because they feel like they're the center of the universe. And these parents are often trying to be friends with their kids. That's like the hallmark here. And neglectful, or they're very uncomfortable with their kiddos' feelings. I just noticed our logo is wrong there. Anyway, these parents are, hands off the circle, bottom and top circle of security language. These kiddos have the highest suicide rate, alcohol, drug use, delinquency, and impulsive behavior. And then another one that I like to add are helicopter parents, which is kind of new since the 90s and early 2000s. And these are parents who hover. They have a hard time letting their kid make mistakes. They literally look like they hover around. They kind of want to bubble wrap their kids. They're compulsive about germs. They lobby for their kids. They constantly problem solve for them instead of the kids solving problems for themselves. They are often very spoiled. And not always, but they do things when the kids can do it themselves. Like they never have the kids do their own laundry or help with cooking. They're constantly cleaning the room for them, and they're just doing things that kids can do themselves. They overpraise, or they're very generic in their praise, and they do it just too much when it's, we don't focus on like the effort. We're constantly focused on outcome, and so many good jobs all the time. Everything's good, 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 good. And what we know with these parents, the kiddos have lower academic performance. They have a lot of anxiety. We see so many kids with this now. Distrustful. They have poor social skills, low self-esteem, the horrible critical thinking skills. This is rampant now with kids these days. And really because the message they receive from their parents is, one, they're the center of the universe, and two, that parent doesn't believe they can handle hard things because the parent constantly does things for them. And when they're hovering, the message is you're not safe. That's where the anxiety comes from. So at the end of the day, we want to go through those stages of attachment. We want a secure attachment so kids believe they can handle the world, they can trust themselves, they can trust others. We really want this piece. So here's another an example of a metaphor that comes from Jennifer Clary, who's an instructor with ICP, and her book Connected Parenting, which is excellent, by the way. She talks about attachment in terms of rock climbing, that as if we want our kids to, grow in life and to develop skills and autonomy, we have to give them enough slack to climb up the wall, right? If we hold too tight, they can never learn, they can never grow. We force them to stay close, essentially. Think of helicopter parenting, right? But if we let go of the rope entirely, they fall off the wall and experience us as unavailable. We don't want that either. So I think you're constantly negotiating the child and how much of that rope they need as they get older, right? And the more older they get, the more secure they are, the more slack we can have in that rope, so to speak. So it's really this connection between it's really a dance between connection and independence with our kids. And we're that compass point, that secure base, so they can bungee cord out and come back in. But they need to know we're consistent and predictable, and we make room for all parts of them, their interests, their emotions, that it's okay that they're different from their sibling. They're not the same as you, or maybe they are the same as you. That children just learn to be dependent, but in a healthy way. They have to learn to be dependent before they're ready to be independent. They need to know that they can count on people before they're ready to be on their own. So hopefully this makes sense. And really, at the end of the day, kids are good, meaning, and trust me, dysregulation doesn't mean bad. Kids are good, generally, like they have the best of intentions. They are fairly, as the brain matures, they make good choices. And the older they get, the better their choices get. Of course, our little ones don't have a fully functioning thinking brain, so they don't always make great choices. But ultimately, as the brain grows, they will follow your lead more and more and more if we have their heart. They have our heart. So we want this. And what will happen is if we don't have their heart, if attachment isn't safe and they can't depend on us, we're going to have something called counterwill. The kids are going to resist us. They're not going to follow our lead. They become quite guarded against intimacy, like our cat kids and our disorganized attachment kids. Where depending hurts. Showing our true selves hurts because we are rejected for it. We are shut down for it. We are punished for it. And then they become oppositional. And to be fair, kids naturally are a little more oppositional when they're 2 and when they're teens, because they're developing called individuation. They're becoming a separate person than their family. Now, I say this, you're like, what do you mean a 2-year-old becomes separate? Literally, before the age of 18 months, our children think they are a part of us. They literally can't differentiate between themselves and their parent. And then at 18 months, it starts to shift. And that's when you see kids being like, I do it, and me, and mine. They realize they're different. So you get this explosion of like emergent energy to do things on their own and explore on their own. And the same thing happens in teenagers when they're getting ready to leave the nest. They're separating from their family of origin to go out into the world or go to college or get a job or get an apartment with their friends, whatever it is. So we do naturally see this opposition, but it shouldn't categorize the entire relationship. It's just we see it more often at these certain ages. But opposition shouldn't categorically be the theme of our 6-year-olds or our 10-year-olds. It comes up, but if your child is overall oppositional, often it is a result of counterwill. And this comes from the work of Dr. Gordon Neufeld. And we know this based on the attachment research. It's a term he coined, counterwill. So one of like the really great ways to prevent counterwill from developing is ensuring that we like repair when we screw up. Because I can talk about all these amazing things you're supposed to do as a parent, right? But you're not always going to do it because we're not perfect, and we're going to be distracted, and we're going to yell at our kids, and we're not going to do co-regulation, and we're going to lose it and do the wrong thing and say the wrong thing. And we're going to hurt their feelings, and we're the worst mom in the world. Breathe. You're human. Okay. Remember, only good enough parenting 30% of the time. So the other 70% of the time when we fail to meet that standard, we're going to do repairs. That is so important, is what we do after we screw up. It's much more important than what happens when we screw up. And that means a lot of apologizing, where you initiate, I screwed up. I am sorry. Mom was having a hard day. She is going to take a big breath next time instead of yelling. I need to cool down. I need to go for a walk. I had a really hard day. I am so sorry I did that. These repairs, when we've hurt our children, because we're in a relationship and humans hurt each other, is we step towards, we take accountability for our actions. We talk about the impact it had on them. So we not only say, I did this, we name how it hurt them, and then we say what we're going to do differently next time, and we do it. We don't just say it, we don't just give it lip service, we actually do it. That is rupture and repair. And the more we can do that, the more our children will take accountability for their actions, the more they say, Mom, it's not like do as I say, not, do as I say, not as I do. Like, they'll see their parents walk the walk of accountability, and that will lay the pretense for them to take accountability in their own relationships with people. And the other thing I just wanted to sing where we're kind of at with this. Okay, just wanted to gauge here. I wanted to show you this video on the still face experiments. That this is something just in our age of technology is worth mentioning, is because we are so go, 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 we're distracted, we're on our phones, we're on freaking TikTok, we're on Facebook, we're on email, like we're distracted. We're busy, we've got several kids at home, we're shuttling from activity to activity. Kids are always looking to us to say, am I safe? Are you watching? Am I important? Am I seen? Am I safe? Am I soothed? Right? Safe, seen, soothed, secure. And sometimes if we're not cognizant, we check out because we're overwhelmed. We are on our phone in front of our kids when they're trying to get our attention. And again, you're going to screw up. But I want you to watch these experiments that were done with kids and how quickly it leads to emotion dysregulation in kids. So it's just noticing. And when we think of kids in our module on supporting emotion regulation, I don't know if I talk about this. So it's important that we introduce this at some point in the course.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction.
Oh, and I will include a link to this below. So if you want to skip this part and watch the video in your own browser, you can do that.
That they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
Okay, so I did want to mention that, the still face, and it's not to make you feel bad. It's just to be aware of when we disconnect from our kids over and over and over again, just like that infant in the video, and we don't bring them back. and we don't have a chance, like she did a reparation there, right? Like she did connected. Our kids eventually start to shut down. And so what we will see with kids like this is a couple defenses that happen. That's where we get like a lot of the, like the cat kids, like the really kind of prickly kids. And so they can become, if we disconnect too often, we don't offer repairs, and we're not consistent in our caregiving, a couple of things can happen. We can have kids who become very alpha. And if this like rings true to you, I highly encourage you to check out the Neufeld Institute, and they have courses on this, on alpha kids who have an inverse attachment style where they're the boss, they're the leader. They're oppositional. They want to be the person who calls the shots. These kids are out of sync because they haven't had a parent who is a reliable leader. So they said, well, someone's got to be the boss. So the child becomes the boss. Quite characteristic of parents who have a permissive attachment style or a neglectful attachment style. Okay. And then you have oppositional, which can be characteristic similar to alpha. And these kids have a lot of counterwill from everybody. It's not just the parent. They're just oppositional with everyone because they can't, they don't trust adults. It's very wounding for them. They can attach elsewhere where parents become important, and it's pets that are more important. Other kids are more important. So kids are, peer oriented, which means their attachments to their friends supersede the attachment to the parents. And of course, the teenagers' friends become more important, but a parent, that the family should always come before their peers. That's how we're oriented to stay in attachment with our caregivers if they're safe. Kids can numb out, where they just like numb out all their feelings, similar to our cat or disorganized attached kiddos. They numb out, they can't feel their feelings, so they struggle with impulse control. They can't sense when things are dangerous anymore. And then sometimes they dissociate and they zone out, where they tune out things that are distressing to keep painful memories away. It's not good stuff. We don't want this stuff, right? So how do we form secure attachment? Well, I mean, the essence is those 6 levels. We want to make room for all those 6 stages. Okay. So that we want to go back to that circle of security. We want to allow lots of room for autonomy and play. And so we want to helicopter them. We want them to be able to make mistakes, and it's okay. We tell kids like mistakes is what makes your brain grow. It's okay to make mistakes. It's important that you tried, you put effort in. And anyway, so we make room for the fact that they're different than their siblings. And so we see them for who they are. We make room for all of the feelings and all the parts themselves. We make room for those different stages of attachment. You can never love your kid too much. Like you can bubble wrap your kids. That just isn't good. We can helicopter them, but that comes from a parent's insecurity and fear. That's not love. That's fear. That's not parenting from a place of authenticity. That's parenting from a place of defense. We comfort when distressed. So we provide, go to the lesson on supporting emotion regulation. Okay. We co-regulate. We do time-ins, we stay close, those kinds of things. We use active listening skills. So, and that's also in our discipline module. Be present and mindful in your interactions, putting our phone away, not responding to every email while we're supposed to be spending time eating with our kids, or ask them how their day was and being distracted by an email. So learning to put the phone away. Being attuned, noticing what's going on, the child feels seen. Be alpha, you've got to be, we don't touch on this later. I'm sorry, this is from an old presentation. So being alpha simply means like you have to be the boss when kids are young. It means you're a benevolent leader though. So, malevolent, that's bad, benevolent. So it means like you set limits and boundaries, but you're still loving about it. You're firm, but still loving about that. You want to be you want to be dependable. So it doesn't matter how they screw up, you still love them, and you let them know that even if there is a consequence and even if there's punishment, we let them know I love you at the end of it. We let them know like we're good, kiddo. Like, yeah, there's going to be a consequence. You snuck out or you hit your brother or, whatever it was, but ultimately you are loved and you were very clear about that. Okay. We talk to our children, not just at them. We're not just barking words at them. We spend time getting to know them, asking them questions, those kinds of pieces to engage them. Collect the eyes, the smile, and a nod before we want to ask them to do something, unload the dishwasher, do their laundry. You need to prime their attachment signals, which means we get down on their level. We give them a compliment or make a joke to get a smile. And then we get a nod being like, yeah, I noticed you're playing on your video game. You're getting really good at that. Or, oh, I loved how well you're playing with your sister, and your kids are like, yeah, I do. I do play well with my sister. Yeah, I'm rocking these video games. They're already in receptive mode. We've primed their attachments by getting those eyes and the smile and the nod. And then we ask them to go do something. We don't just bark at them from down the stairs, or from the top of the stairs down to come clean their room. We're not designed to follow people we're not in attachment with. So we have to initiate the attachment signals, which comes from eye contact, proximity, and warmth or playfulness. And then we get them to do something. And then the other thing that I don't have a ton of time to talk about, but it's really important, is that we can't always be with our kids. This is fair. We're talking about attachment, right? And maybe you're a parent who works 2 jobs, or you are a blended family and you only get 50% of the time with your kids. And so you're feeling horrible. We were designed to raise children in a village of attachment, a village. The problem is we put kids in with adults whom they don't have an attachment with, which is the problem. There's nothing wrong with leaving your kid with a teacher. There's nothing wrong with leaving your kid with a babysitter or a nanny or a day home worker. Like, it's not wrong. The problem is we don't spend enough time priming that child for that relationship. So if you are going to introduce a new person who's taking care of your child, daycare worker, teacher, nanny, whoever, you need to spend time curating that attachment. You matchmake. You find things you have in common with that person. You have your child see you physically with that other adult, showing that you approve of them, standing close to them, making eye contact, smiling at them. You find out what you have in common with that person, and let your kids know. It's like, oh, she's just like mom. She really loves horses, or she has a dog too, or she has a little boy, just like I have you. So there's those pieces where we have to say, like, we're showing them I'm in proximity, just like attachment levels, right? Sameness. This is how we're the same, showing that this person is very significant to us. And so instead of just like dropping, having a new babysitter come to the house, like, you got to pay that babysitter to come once where you're there, so you can that child feels safe with that person. It's the same with, the first day of school. Often I recommend that the parents go with the child to visit that teacher before the first day of school. And we, find out some things about that teacher. And teachers are getting better about this. I know my kids get a letter from their teacher before they start the school here with a picture of the teacher and what they're interested in. Yeah. And if you have like a new nanny, I remember doing this and paying her for the first week to come into my house and just hang out with my son. I didn't leave him alone with her there. And it just takes time. And so if you're leaving your child in daycare, make sure that they have an attachment figure. So often with daycares, for instance, they'll have multiple caregivers within the daycare. That often becomes a huge problem, is that when that child becomes distressed, they don't have a compass point. That we want to say, I want this, if possible, the same person to be responding to my child. That's the person who puts them down for a nap. That's the person the child goes to if they're having a tantrum. That's the person who feeds my child. And so that is something like, usually Montessori and Waldorf kind of inspired daycares, day homes, schools are very good about this concept, that a teacher will follow the child, that, that the daycare worker moves with them into different rooms as they mature. But that often can be a source of a lot of anxiety for kids in daycare settings, is it's not the same adult responding to them. It's a bunch of strangers. And of course, that's distressing for kids. Whew. So hopefully this quick module on attachment is helpful to you. We have a whole course on attachment as well if you want more of this. But honestly, I think that it's sufficient to understand how important this is and the stages of attachment. You should be good.